All right, friends, it's time for another edition of What Sold on eBay. This is February 2026 edition from Storage Warrior. Let me share my screen and I'll get right to it. Okay, I don't know, I have like maybe 10 sales that I'm going to share with you that are interesting for various different reasons. I can't even remember where we got these dumbbells. They're pretty cool. They're marked 3/4 of a pound on them. Obviously, very old. I don't know how old. I don't know how to assess this stuff. They may have come from a junk truck. I'm not sure. Both marked 3/4 of a pound, but they were actually different weights, which made them sort of cool. Maybe they didn't bother checking that, or I don't know how they were marketed, but they don't look altered in any way. I only got $40 for these. I shipped them overseas, but they arrived pretty fast, and the buyer was happy. I just think this was such an interesting thing, even though it took some time to sell. I love old things like this, and I will always pick them up, even if they're not worth a whole ton of money, because I just think they're very cool things to have in our store. This is the opposite of very cool. This is very boring. So I want to bring this one to your attention because you should never discount textbooks. I don't know if there are very many booksellers listening to the podcast or watching my YouTube channel, but if you're not selling books, there may be some subcategories of books that are worth looking into. Books can be a pain because they tend to be heavy. And unless you're shipping media mail down into the US, which is relatively affordable, they can be quite expensive to ship. And textbooks like this are very heavy. So this probably costs like close to $20 to ship wherever it went. But anyway, I never discount textbooks as potential. And we were at very big company digging around one night, and this textbook came out, and Johan was like, I don't know, should we bother? And I was like, I don't know. It's been a long time. It's probably old, but it turned out that it wasn't. They've actually only published one edition of this textbook since this one. So this one was still very relevant for university students. And I actually sold it in just a couple of days after listing it for $49.99 US. And as you know, I'm listing most of my items again on ebay.com. This especially because it's media, and I figured it would ship to the US, which I'm pretty sure that it did. I listed it in US dollars, and I'm happy with that sale. I have to mention these though because these came out of the same place. There were a couple of pairs of shoes that were pretty destroyed, but out of the back, we dug up this pair of Fluvogs. John Fluvog, if you don't know, Vancouver company, pretty iconic, pretty interesting designs. These are very Doc Marten-esque, this sort of look to them, but they have some pretty like bizarre, kind of like funky design shoes, and they're very popular, very expensive, and usually resell quite well. These were in pretty good condition, just minor little scuffs and dust on them. Soles weren't really worn. These took a week or two to sell. Actually, I thought they would sell faster than the textbook, but there you go. I guess somebody really needed that textbook. $225 Canadian. I sold these on .ca because it's a Canadian company. I don't remember if I shipped them to the US or not, or where they went. But with stuff that's made in Canada, I will still often list it on .ca. Even if that's not rational, maybe it's just for posterity reasons. But anyways, let's get on to this one. This was another one that got thrown out. Of course, people often threw out the boxes for their vintage video game stuff and toys and things like that back in the 80s and 90s. If you were smart enough to keep the box, you could definitely extract some value from it. This person wasn't. They ended up throwing it out, but we extracted it before it went to the landfill. It had the original styrofoam inside it, and it also had a couple of you can see these plastic bags that would have contained like maybe the little maybe the controllers or something like that. So that was all in there, and I didn't have this up for very long. I want to say a couple of weeks. It sold pretty fast. I remember it going out to Ontario or maybe Quebec. So pretty happy with that sale. Always have to look for these vintage empty boxes from the 80s. Some of them are really good, and this one was in good condition. If they have the inserts, that makes them even better. Okay, this was an interesting one. So we didn't get a lot from this truck, but there were a number of cassettes. And I remember the first lot of cassettes that we sold from this was 9 Inch Nails cassettes, like a lot of 4. I think we got 60 US for them. And they sold really, really fast too, which I was super happy with. But these actually sat on our table to be processed for quite a few weeks, and I didn't really want to do them. I spent a little bit of time looking into what these tapes were, and most of them were like demo cassettes, like, a band would send into like a radio station or something. And then this one in the middle here, I think was like a little like kind of indie like compilation of a few bands with their like singles, and they put it on there. So British, this one, Gibson Girls was American. I think a couple of them were Canadian. So I looked them up to see what they were. Finding comps was literally impossible. I mean, there was only a few of these probably that were ever produced. So I decided to just put them up as a lot. I don't know. Do people buy old demo cassettes? I have no idea. These are from the 80s and the early 90s. I put them up for only $50 US, not knowing what they were worth, and they sold really fast. Like, this is one of those ones where you're like, oh man, I fumbled it. So if you know what I fumbled here, please tell me. I thought somebody would be interested in these, but I don't know if there's like a band on here that made it big, or if demo cassettes are just a thing that people are into. If I ever get them again, I'll be sure to list them, and I'm definitely going to ask a higher price than this, but I hope the buyer was happy. Okay, this is so fun. I've got to share this with you. Electronics are a category that we actually really like, even though they can be kind of a pain, because the buyers can, say something's wrong with it, even if you don't think that there was. Returns are a pain because the items are heavy. We tend to sell most electronics for parts, but in this case, we were pretty sure that this one worked. Now, in all of the years that we've been doing reselling, we have never come across this particular BOSE Wave music system. Had never seen this one before. But we'll always take BOSE stuff because it tends to retain some value. People do like it, and it's relatively good quality. So we pulled this one out and put it all together, and it came with this multi-CD changer, the remote, the cradle for the remote, and everything worked perfectly. So great, so cool. And looking it up, realizing that the Wave music system is something that people want. It's relevant. I guess maybe it sounds really good, or it's good quality. I'm not sure why, but $360 Canadian was a no-brainer for this. It often sells for more with the remote, but I was looking for a fast sale on this one, and I think it took maybe 4 or 5 days to sell for full price. And we were like, wow, this is so amazing. I can't believe we've never come across anything like this particular BOSE system before, until literally a week later when we found another one. This one was a slightly different model, but as you can see, it's the same shape. The pedestal on the bottom is not the multi-CD changer. It's something called the Sound Touch pedestal. It connects to Wi-Fi. I'm not sure what it does. This one actually was not working at first, but it turned out that the CD sensor was just dusty. So we cleaned it off, and then it started to work perfectly. And this one, again, $300 Canadian, sold in a matter of days. It's so weird how that happened. Like, to never get that particular music system ever. And we've been doing this for 14 years now. And then to get 2 of them inside of a week, wow. So I guess it's kind of a bolo. Look for these. I think it's a no-brainer if you know anything about electronics that BOSE is going to be relatively good. But this particular system can return good money really fast. We were so happy with that. This one I just get such a laugh out of. Of course, you're in Canada, you know what Cirque du Soleil is. Everybody around the world knows that. We were actually pulling some chairs out of a truck that night, and we needed something to protect them in our truck because they were white upholstery, and we didn't want them to get dirty. So I grabbed this blanket out of the back of a truck, and I'm like, oh, we can use this. And then I held it up, and I'm like, oh, Cirque du Soleil. I'm like, that could be interesting. Sometimes that stuff is collectible. I don't know. So anyway, we used the blanket to protect the furniture, and then the blanket turned out to be worth more than the furniture. This Cirque du Soleil blanket, actually kind of funny that this blanket was made in the US. But anyway, even though it had just been kind of thrown around and discarded, it was actually in really good condition other than being wrinkled. It didn't have any stains on it, no damage, no holes, no tears. This took maybe a month to sell for full price, $99.99. I talked about this one on the podcast last week when I was discussing selling on .com and using UPS to ship items to the US. This art glass paperweight, Robert held stuff. Again, it's a BC business, art glass business. So the pieces, rubber held pieces, are relatively easier to come by where I live than they would be in other places, but they are highly collectible in many parts of the world. This paperweight turned out to be a particularly good one. At first, I thought it was only going to be worth about $30, but then I found this almost exact one sold for 100 US. And I thought, okay, I'm going to throw that up. And at first, I actually didn't see the held signature on it. And so I didn't even get a good picture of it. So even when I was taking the photos of this, I missed it. But you can see it just up here in the upper left, the held signature. And it has the sticker. Excellent condition. This is a small item, only about 3 inches, $129.99. And that sold overnight after I listed it. So happy with that quick sale. And I asked the buyer to prepay the tariffs before I sent it out. Otherwise, I'd send it UPS and she would be charged a pretty high brokerage fee plus who knows what other fees. And she said, "Oh, that's fine. Don't worry about it. I just ordered something from UPS and it didn't have any tariffs." And I was like, "Okay, well, this is made in Canada and this was before the Supreme Court ruled Trump's tariffs to be unconstitutional. So this carried a 35%, I think 35% tariff on it, or 25. I forget what Canada was, plus whatever else. It was going to be like $65 or more in fees." And I told her that and she was like, "Oh, don't worry, it's fine." So, okay, I sent it UPS and it was delivered today actually. So hopefully they're happy and they weren't too surprised with the duties that they had to pay. Why am I sharing this one? Oh, it's just cool. Like, I think Johan got this collection of lighters at a yard sale last year for like, I don't know, $50. It was a pretty good collection. I think there were 25 or 30 lighters in it. And some of them were pretty interesting. I like this one because it's the old Esso logo, made in Japan, this one. And actually, this was another one I ended up having to send UPS because the buyer didn't respond to me about paying the tariffs. So I just wrote him and said, "Okay, well, you're going to have to pay the brokerage," and off it goes. So I sent it and I guess it got there. I guess everything was fine. Anyway, just aesthetically, I think this is really cool. It says "Happy Motoring" on the back. You've got the enamel. I have no idea if it even worked. I never bothered testing lighters. I feel like people buy these, for the aesthetics of them, for the advertising and the novelty of it, for the most part. So that was a pretty good sale. Let's see. I've got 2 more to share with you. Oh, this is so great. So this Marc Jacobs Y2K chic leather bag, it's probably from like around 2003 or something like that. Again, this was discarded with another Marc Jacobs bag and a couple of other semi-designer bags, I think from Tory Burch. The most hilarious thing about this bag was like it's got this zip pocket at the top, you see. And of course, you always have to check the pockets to see what people may have left inside of these bags and also to make sure that they're clean. Inside this bag was a receipt from a Chanel store for another bag for like $2,500. But we did not find the Chanel bag, only the receipt. How annoying is that? But anyway, this is still a really cool bag and it was in great condition. And it took maybe 2 or 3 weeks to sell for full price, $224.99. So this, I guess it's considered vintage now, this Y2K, like stuff from like 2000 to 2005. A lot of it is quite popular, trendy, and stylish. And this particular bag was actually really nice, like really nice quality, really nice like shape and feel to it. If you're a woman and you're into bags, like you know what I'm talking about when you pick up a bag and you're like, "Oh yeah, this just feels good in my hand." This was one of those. And I thought aesthetically it was pretty nice with these cute bird details, but it wasn't like over the top. So I get why this design is still popular and in high demand. Good quality, kind of classic design, goes with everything, dress it up or down. Yeah, just an awesome piece. Okay, I've got one more and then I'm going to go. And that's this militaria lot. So, yeah, okay, look, I've been criticized before for selling militaria and not trying to get it back to the families. This one, if I remember correctly, this was abandoned with us in a lot of things that we got from, I think, maybe a mover or maybe a junk company. And it had been sitting for a long time. We've actually had this in the warehouse for several years. And so yeah, they just kind of abandoned it with us, and it's this little collection with the cufflinks, a few of the buttons. There's one medal there. It's not a particularly special one. A really neat watch, old watch. Let me see if I can't remember what was special about this watch. Maybe it was automatic. But yeah, old, I guess it says Mido, some sort of like military watch. I don't know if it was working or not. Kind of doesn't look like it would have been. But anyway, we had this in the shop for a really long time, and I was in the warehouse one morning complaining about how nothing was selling. And then I got an offer on this for $325. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'm doing it. That's pretty good. And off it went. Stayed in Canada, so I love that. And hopefully went to a collector who will really appreciate it. It just sat in a bag in our warehouse for like 6 or 7 years. So I'm glad that it's off to a better home. Okay, that's all I'm going to share for you this month. I think it was kind of a shorter, quicker one. February was a little bit disappointing for sales, and I've got a dessert chilling in the fridge, so I'm just going to go and get that now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe, youtube.com/@StorageWarrior Podcast. Leave a comment and tell me what some of your favorite sales of February 2026 were. Bye for now.